Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my March wrap-up part 2. Because I was in the disaster area from the 25th of March until the 18th of April, you have only seen my pre-recorded videos. And of course I could not do my March wrap-up since I'm back home and able to record a recent video. I will talk about the 5 books that I finished in the second half of March. Some of the clips were recorded in that area. I will talk more about my disaster area experiences in a separate video. So let's see which books I have finished in the second half of March. Today is the 15th of March and I finished rereading Rebecca by Daphne de Maurier. This book is among my top 10 favorite books and I just love this book. It was very interesting to reread a book for the third time for Books of Alfred Hitchcock project. In this book we follow a young woman who becomes the second Mrs. De Winters after a very quick romance in Monte Carlo. She discovers that his household home, which is called Manderley, is haunted or adored by the first Mrs. De Winters, Rebecca. And as a woman of very low self-esteem, she suffers the consequences of this adoration, especially by the housemaid. And also she tries to uncover the secret behind Rebecca's death. I first read this book when I was a teenager and I thought the mystery was very interesting. And I was quite impressed by the romance. After a break of 15 years, I read the book the second time. And it was just to remember what was so special about this book. And this time, since I knew the mystery very well, I concentrated on the psychology of the narrator and the other characters. The very unhealthy relationship between the couple, the very low self-esteem, and how it affected everything that was happening around her, and how the second Mrs. De Winters would have so much different time if she had a little bit of self-esteem more, was very interesting to discover. And when we come to the second half, which included the mystery, I thought the mystery was very decent again. And with the addition of the psychology of the characters, especially including the married couple and Mrs. Danvers, I could see the richness of the mystery much more because I knew the outcome. So this was a very enjoyable listening experience for me. This book still kept the special place in my heart, and that's why it's 10 out of 10 for me. Today is the 21st of March and I finished Before the Fact by Frances Iles. I read this book for Books of Alfred Hitchcock project. And this book was adapted into a 1941 mystery film called Suspicion. Frances Iles is actually a pseudonym for Anthony Berkeley, and he is one of the most famous Golden Age mystery authors. He is also one of the members of the Detection Club, which I read a book last year for our readathon, the Christie's Missing Readathon. Anyway, in this book, Lina, who's in her late 20s, marries a man who's considered a disgrace by his family, Johnny Argyle. But Johnny claims with the love of Lina, he becomes a very different person. He will be a perfect husband for Lina. Even in her honeymoon, Lina realizes that Johnny is not as pure as he now claims to be, but she decides to accept him for all of his faults, such as laziness and not wanting to work, and gambling, and also thievery. As the time passes, Lina becomes more and more suspicious of Johnny, and really questions if she will be able to cure him with her love as her original intent was. I thought this book had a very interesting main character. Lina is certainly not a stupid woman. She actually feels something is wrong with Johnny from the start. Even when she finds out most of her suspicions were true and she had been right from the beginning, uh, she still has the hope that her bad boy will eventually turn into a fine husband. And it's really interesting how such a clever woman could never stop loving this very pure excuse for a man. I was sometimes frustrated with her, but it was also fascinating to be in her mind and how she could rationalize everything that Johnny did and how this time he will keep his promise. I especially liked the ending of the book. Uh, Although it seemed a bit vague, I really did like how the last pages were full of suspicion of what would happen to Lina. And I gave Before the Fact by Francis Iles an 8 out of 10. Today is the 25th of March. I'm a few hours away from going to the disaster area. I want to talk about the book that I finished yesterday. I finished the second book in London Calling series, Husband Material by Alexis Hall. In this book, our couple who got together in the first book, Luke and Oliver, after being together for 1.5 years, do find ourselves in a surrounding in which most of their friends do get married, and when Luke decides that he wants to spend the rest of his life with Oliver and proposes, they go through some relationship issues and try to figure out if they are right for each other or not. This story seems to be heavily inspired by the romantic comedy Four Weddings and a Funeral, since actually Four Weddings and a Funeral happens in the second book. I have to say I was very disappointed by this second book in the series. All of the issues they seem to have resolved in the first book appear in this book many times, which made my listening experience feel like I was listening to the same argument over and over again. And I really hated the ending of the book. I'm not against unconventional endings, but the fact that this seemingly very happy couple could not communicate with each other about what they really want after being together for 1.5 years, and this really made me question the validity of their relationship, and if this couple is actually right for each other or not, or are they just pretending. I'm not even sure if I will read the third book in the trilogy, which would be titled Father Material, just because of the quite decent beginning of the book and some really quirky and fun to read side characters. I gave Husband Material by Alexis Hall a 6 out of 10. Today is the 26th of March. Right now, I'm at the room that we are staying in disaster area. And yesterday at the bus, I finished Goodnight, Mr. Tom. In this book, an orphan called William is taken to the rural England at the start of World War II to be one of the evacuated children from London. And Tom becomes the foster parent of William. At first, William is a very weak and a very scared child because of the abuse that he suffered from his mother, who's not psychologically well. And as William and Tom become more and more devoted to each other, they form a very different relationship, and William becomes a very different sort of child who is healthy and has more self-esteem. I really did love this middle grade book. It was one of the best books that I read this month, and the bond between William and Mr. Tom was incredibly sweet, and I also learned many things from the time period, how the children were evacuated. It was great to be the witness of the journey of self-development that Orphan William goes through. I cried at some parts. They were very, very emotional, and I felt so much for the friendship and also the companionship that William found in his new home. So that's why I gave Goodnight, Mr. Tom a 9 out of 10. Today is the 31st of March, and I finished the last book that I was reading for the month of March yesterday evening. It was called The Scapegoat by Daphne de Maurier. I initially started reading this book with Charlie Brooks, but she decided that she was not in the mood to read the book right now, and I decided to finish it on my own. But it took some time because of the other books on my TBR. But I thought it would be a good addition to the books that I was reading for March Mystery Madness. I decided to finish the book this month. In this book, John, who lives in England, one day meets a man who looks just like him, called Jean. After they have a night together and have drinks, finds that his ID and his other belongings are missing. Instead, Jean's ID and belongings are there. He decides to take Jean's place as an adventure, and he meets Jean's family. Seems to be at odds with each other. Jean seems to have a neglected wife, an over-religious sister who hates and doesn't speak him, a daughter who adores Jean but cannot get the attention that she wants, a brother who envies him, a sister-in-law whom Jean has an affair with once, and a mother who seems to be aging and have a very bad health. After John spends time with them, he decides that unlike Jean, he loves this family and decides to make the family relations work again. First of all, I thought this book had a very good idea to take the place of a man that just looks like him, but everything about his life is a mystery. So it's sort of like an amnesia trope that I really do like. On the other hand, the execution could have been much better. The beginning of the book was very engaging, and also the ending of the book was very engaging and also somewhat emotional, because like John, we also grow to love the family. But the middle part was unnecessarily long, and it had some details about French landscape which seemed unnecessary for the story. Overall, although I'm glad I finished the book, I thought it was one of the lesser works of Daphne de Maurier, and I gave The Scapegoat a 7 out of 10. So those were the 5 books that I finished in the second half of March. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. So Turkish word of the day. Since some of the clips were recorded in the earthquake area, I thought earthquake should be the word of the day. Earthquake means deprem in Turkish, and deprem is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.